Hello and welcome to today's VC Task Force Gary's Picks event for investors and startups. My name is Joel Rosenberg, Director of Business Development and Strategy for VC Task Force. VC Task Force is an organization where the venture community comes together to address critical issues, provide workshops and other events for the benefit of the venture and entrepreneurial communities. VC Task Force provides access to an extensive ecosystem of VCs, corporate VCs, and angel investors. You may ask questions anytime during today's event, and time permitting, they will be answered live after today's interview. It is my pleasure to welcome Gary's Picks host, Gary Fowler. Gary is CEO and co-founder of GSD Venture Studios, an award-winning growth stage AI venture studio. Gary is also co-founder of the award-winning AI startup Eva.ai, as well as the investment firm DY Investments. Today, Gary will be interviewing special guest Adam Boggs, CEO and co-founder of Meahana, an AI-powered platform designed to make every meeting smarter and more productive. Meetings are broken, costing businesses $37 billion a year in wasted time. Adam is fixing that. Instead of wasting time on unstructured discussions, Meahana helps teams pick the right approach, guides them through the meeting in real time, and ensures fast, actionable follow-up. By automating meeting prep, structuring conversations for alignment and decision-making, and capturing key insights, Meahana turns meetings into a powerful engine for progress. Current clients use the platform to eliminate wasted meeting hours, reduce prep time, and ensure follow-ups happen seamlessly, resulting in better decisions, clearer accountability, and more meaningful outcomes. After 13 years leading high-stakes strategy sessions for global companies, Adam saw the massive inefficiency firsthand. Now, as founder of Meahana, he's bringing AI-driven intelligence to meetings, turning them into structured, high-impact work sessions that drive real decisions and action. Adam is the author of The Business Artist, Applying Principles and Artistries and Structure to Business Execution. His vision? A world where meetings aren't a drain, but a competitive advantage. Take it away, Gary.
That's great. Thanks, Joel. Great to see everybody again here today on Gary's Picks. Adam, good to see you. So,
good to see you too, Gary.
Yeah, walk us through your journey from Purdue to USC's Marshall School of Business, and how in the world did you get into the corporate world from there?
Yeah, so I started off my career like many folks, building computers, tearing them apart, thinking I was going to be kind of an IT coder. And I started off in a data center, actually at 3M as an intern. And in those days, everything was kind of called e-business. And I was drinking a lot of Diet Mountain Dew, sitting behind a desk. It took me like 30 minutes to get from my car to my desk. And I realized kind of that world wasn't for me. I had a lot of personality. I had this like customer-centric perspective inside of me. And so I decided not to pursue the computer path initially, but I moved out to LA. I got, like anything else, I played a lot of beach volleyball. I lived in a one-bedroom with 3 people. I worked at Circuit City selling laptops with this computer degree to kind of make rent. And then I finally got a real job, which would happen to be in the world of sales. Eventually worked my way into USC for business school, and then worked my way up from consulting from there. I worked at this company called BTS, which was this awesome business. It's a Swedish company where you would facilitate these really critical meetings and workshops across the world for different clients. And they looked for people who had kind of a business acumen, financial acumen, but some kind of a, I don't know, je ne sais quoi component. For mine, it was musical theater background. It was being on stage in front of people, being able to sort of flex and improvise in front of an audience versus just always following this really structured, rigid process. And there was a lot of art, there was a lot of sort of improv that goes into that. And so trying to put that all into software is kind of where we've been heading.
So, you moved through various roles. You've been a director of new business, VP of sales and marketing.
Yeah.
And now you're the CEO, and you've transitioned down through there. But, I remember going down through the journey myself, and I spent a couple of years at Hewlett Packard. And I remember the day that my whole plan from the beginning was to learn and go through the corporate experience, and then after 5 years to leave. So
yeah.
Literally the day after I vested, I left. But one of the things I said to myself, when you start to have meetings, then it's time to go.
Sure.
I've seen that. I don't know, but going down through it, the most inefficient meetings I've ever had in my life. And the politics, it was more about posturing politically than it was about trying to get shit done.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, we've all been in those meetings where not that many, but they're great meetings, right? You feel smart. You feel like your voice was heard. You feel like the facilitator guided you through a process. If it was a leader, if it was a, consultant who was brought in, you made decisions. Even if you didn't agree with the decision, you trusted the process. You felt good at that meeting. But most meetings aren't that. They're, let's go through the catalog list of items. Let's hear what Gary has to say. Then let's all judge what Gary just said. Then let's maybe get to one other item. We never made decisions. They weren't clear what we're supposed to do. So we just have another meeting. And so we're really on a mission to solve that problem.
So you were at sales transformation at
Yeah,
BT, and obviously you've seen a lot of challenges, right?
sure.
Going down through this. So how did that really influence your approach to business and leadership today?
Sales transformation in a nutshell is you're changing what or how you're selling, right? A typical company, Gary, as you know, they start off with product A, they get to like 80% total addressable market there. Shareholders need more growth. And so they start with a product B, and they grow that market. And then they have this shiny object called C. You could think of that as like AI or analytics tools. And then the mission is, well, how do we get everyone to sell the portfolio, right? How do we get person A who sells B, person B who sells B, person C who sells C to sell everything? And so then they bring in sales training gurus to say, well, let's train you on cross-selling. And that's like the very basic part of the problem. What you really have is a change management problem. You have to think about how do we incentivize person A, who's always sold A and is great at it, to even be curious to sell B and C? Do customers want to buy A, B, and C from everybody? Who are the competitors in these new markets? Do managers know how to coach people? And so all of that would feel like a series of meetings and workshops and intentional discourse to score deals. And so I would be brought in to lead those meetings and discussions. And when doing that, there was always kind of this artful playbook that you would script together. These are the meetings. These who are the people who need to be in those meetings. These are the decisions we have to make in that. This is what the eventual goal is to be done. And that consulting process is what you pay a lot of money to have somebody come in and do that for. But what about the mid-sized company that's going through a transformation that can't bring in a hired consultant that needs to be able to drive the same success? How do they do that, right? How do we give them the same tools and processes to be consultants themselves inside their own companies? And that's challenging to do. And you get on all these message boards or Slack threads when somebody's like, here's my problem. Does anyone have the PowerPoint deck that solves this? And that's kind of like, I don't know, just putting a little chip in the mix.
Well, a long time ago, I learned a lesson, and that is actually three lessons. Business is a contact sport, always go to the top. And the other thing is you meet the same people going down as you do coming up.
Yeah.
Treat people the right way, the way you want to be treated, whatever culture you're in. And one of the things as we're going down through this journey is going to the top, right? If you have the top person in a meeting, people are going to listen. And
Yeah.
a lot better. They're going to be a lot more attentive, and they're not going to be. They'll be a little bit more political, but they're very cautious about what they say. So when you were going, when the problem, what problem were you trying to solve when you first envisioned Meahana? Number one is, and was there a specific aha moment that made you realize there was a gap in the market for a new meeting and collaboration platform?
Yeah. I mean, we would get brought in to lead really critical mission important meetings for companies. And our hypothesis was often that we could train then the mid-level managers or the people
When you say
below.
we, who's we?
When I was at BTS, when I was in the consulting space.
Got it.
And so that we would lead the most important critical meetings, and we would do that to a general effective level. But then the next level, right? We had to empower the mid-level managers to be able to run a series of meetings and workshops, and we would try to coach them and give them what we call the train the trainer template to follow. And largely that's where things fell apart was those meetings were not effective. The managers didn't know how to lead them or chose to lead them how they had led them in the past. They learned bad behaviors. They didn't have necessarily good conversations. And so these change management, these initiatives would fall apart, not because we didn't start the process right, but because the next level down and the next level down would kind of continuously fail.
You're going down through it, and this is a crowded collaboration tools
Sure.
market. So obviously, Meahana has to stand out against those other tools.
Yeah.
And so tell me a little bit about if you were to say what the perfect storm is in a positive way, what would be a specific use case or success story that best illustrates the kind of impact you believe you can have or have had on the decision-making process?
Yeah. Maybe I'll tell it in that kind of the have had process. That's a little bit more fun. So we recently started working with a company called Philips, which is our largest kind of Fortune 500 company on the platform. They had looked at collaborative tools like digital whiteboards, which are kind of analogs of our physical whiteboard. They use sticky notes. They got people together in a room and they had to sort of transpose all of this data. And they weren't able to effectively guide the meeting in kind of an automated fashion, right? It was a lot of manual work. There was a lot of prep time that went into that. And then if you handed off that meeting to somebody else to be able to lead, you didn't get the same level of skill and expertise inside of that. So being able to templatize what that process really looked like for them, they were doing huge risk mitigation projects. So imagine you're doing a pre-mortem on a large legal project, right? And you're trying to identify what could go wrong, which of those things are likely, and if they do, how do we mitigate against those in the present? And then how do we put an action or accountability stream against that? That's what they call the risk storming methodology. And there's lots of different words for that. But we put them on the Meahana platform and built that same session for them that they had run and put it into a digital toolbox that had some sort of AI application to it that just makes the meeting process easy, kind of like a self-driving car, almost like a self-driving meeting where the facilitator doesn't have to be a skilled consultant who can adapt and improvise. You don't have to be Beethoven on the piano. You just have to know what notes to play in what order.
So you emphasize inclusive participation.
Definitely.
I believe that as a clinical psychologist, right? Empathetic listening, those type of skills, reflective listening are critically important and making every voice heard. But how do you ensure that the technology supports rather than replaces the human collaboration? Because in reality, I mean, you could just
Yeah.
digital clone of somebody and you could have them hash it out, come up with the answer based on sentiment analysis and other things using all
Yeah.
the documents. You wouldn't even have to have these, right? I mean, at
Yeah.
some point, that may in fact happen. That may be the next level when we start to look at things like multi-agent large language models in this environment.
Yeah.
So how do you go down through and what unique features of the platform help to keep people engaged, particularly in hybrid or remote settings?
Yeah. I think the first part of engagement is actually with the meeting designer, right? So are you designing this meeting because it's the one that the AI recommends, or are you learning why it's recommending and you get to put your own kind of voice on that? Because you have to have ownership on the method that you're choosing to work people through. And then the second part of that is there's an intentional aspect of our platform in the collaborative human space that says these decisions need to be made by humans in a discourse fashion where you're going to actually learn from everybody in the room and figure out where misalignment is today. If you think about like social selling, we often talk about that word in the world of sales, but that really means just selling on LinkedIn. If you're trying to sell a big IT project into a company, you could focus on the IT person, but LinkedIn Sales Navigator is probably not sold to a CIO. They're sold to the end users. And then you have to figure out who has social power in that company. If you could redraw the corporate hierarchical structure to Gary, Gary's a low-level guy, but for whatever reason, everybody listens to him. That becomes a little bit more
Hey,
important.
I
So
resemble that remark.
there you go, right? So we have to give Gary a voice inside of a meeting so that meetings don't just follow that kind of top-down driven structure. And so the
Well, and
platform allows for that to
that
play out.
happens a lot, right? And you miss out on the conversations, those jewels that should be listened to, sometimes because of political dynamics are really pushed out of the environment.
Yeah.
With that being said, Adam, tell me a little bit about, how do you plan on growing the user base and the presence in this very competitive collaboration space door number one, and then is what's been the biggest challenge for Meahana so far, and how do you address it?
Yeah, maybe I'll start with the second question and go back to the first. One bit of the challenge is the original product that we built was for ourselves. We lived this problem. We were the consultants. We built the tool we wish we always had, and it's got a lot of power. It's got a lot of control for the facilitator. You can decide to show inputs by names or not. You can decide you want to show there's a lot of stuff you can do. And the reality, Gary, is if you and I were going to start off a meeting with one other person, you just want an easy button that knows what we've been talking about so far, can spit up the right method, can say go. And we're trying to simplify the design and the getting into the platform process, right? So we're using some AI and actually your folks from a GSD perspective to do that. And then the platform itself needs to be more collaborative on a desktop and a mobile screen. So we're trying to play around with the different applications there. It is a crowded market. We often get compared to Miro or to Mural or to Slack or to other types of digital tools that are sort of analogs of the physical world. Meahana is really quite unique in the fact that it's a series of methods that get automated to create this beautiful meeting structure that leaves space for human collaboration. And I often think about the world of music, you know, when you're playing a middle C and a G on a piano, they sound different, but if you play them together, that's harmony, right? And that's what happens in a meeting. You get that lightning in a bottle moment that only really happens in a live collaborative setting. And so being able to use the right series of methods or methodologies to get to those moments is really what the magic is.
You know, I'm gonna follow up a question. I'm gonna go off, my notes.
Yeah,
But the situation you talked about GSD. Tell me a little bit about your experiences in GSD.
sure.
For everybody out there, I'm the founder of GSD Venture Studios,
Yeah.
but it's interesting for me. And then talk about how different your world is now compared to how it was 3 or 4 months ago.
You know, I would say that any good story has a mentor and a hero, right? And sometimes the hero of the journey should be the VC or the person who's coaching you. And in fact, it feels like more of the mentor relationship. I'm almost like a Luke Skywalker, right? Come in, we got a lot of potential, but we don't really know how to use these things properly. And so getting guidance is what's been the most helpful. We've never been told from anyone on your team that what you're doing is terrible and this is wrong and how you're like this or that. It's always been positive and it could be better. And so I would say GSD has been really powerful for me. And you've also let in members of my team as an alignment vehicle to give us confidence that what we're doing has some validation and obviously polish. You know, from an investor perspective, I'm thinking about our first deck to where I'm presenting on now. So simple things in terms of just the mindset that you've given us, standing us up, making us stand taller a little bit, but then also some of the capabilities to be able to be successful on the fundraising side, but now also on the AI development piece.
Talk about that because that's important for the companies out there. They don't understand the power of generative AI. So if we can talk about the power from your perspective, the force.
Yeah, the force. You know, generative AI has gone through this sort of evolution. If you think about Chat GPT, I don't know, 3.0, 3.5, it was mostly copying what other people had done, right? It was predicting the next word. And we use this term in VCs all the time. They love to say we have to get efficiency at scale, right? Efficiency at scale means find out what's working and just copy it all over the place. Versus a reasoning model, which is where GPT 4.0 and DeepSeek and these other get to, is they're able to sort of learn your style, learn what's working inside of your business, and make something unique in terms of what you're building. So I think the world is just starting to realize the potential of generative AI beyond its copyright infringement, and it's just taking what, you know, somebody wrote a long time ago and putting it in your words, this whole of in the style. Everyone has an in the style of themselves, and the more you play with these tools, the more you figure out what that is by just using it.
Yeah, most people don't realize the power. These give you superpowers. I
Yeah,
did a keynote in Silicon Valley recently, and I talked about the superpowers. And if you don't use them, nothing good is going to happen to you because
I would agree. Yeah.
you're going to be so far down, and there's going to be a gap in
It
wealth.
doesn't, and it doesn't take long, right? I mean, I'm thinking about even if you use the first models and then put it away and never signed up for Pro and didn't incorporate it into your workflow, it's 3 generations ahead now, and you're behind in terms of realization of what it can do or what it could have done for you in that process.
I have almost 4,000 prompts now.
Sure.
But here's the
Yeah.
other thing that's really interesting, Adam.
Yeah.
What I found is that it's kind of like getting a PhD every day because I'm spending about 3 hours on it a day.
Yeah.
And what happens is it's like you do it that much, and then you have smart people like you that you're talking to, and a few stem cells here and there. Everything changes.
Yeah. There you go.
Like
You know,
the
I
whip
was
is
thinking
through in
about,
a
I'll
positive
give
way.
you, this is my analogy for technology today. So I really like history, right? People ask me why I like history, and I say, well, it's like watching a Marvel movie. If you watch the movie The Endgame, the last movie of all these characters coming together, and if that was your first Marvel movie, you would have no idea what's going on. You didn't see the origin story of all these things play out. Just like if you listen to a history documentary about some battle in Roman history, but you don't know all these characters and backstory. You don't know Alexander the Great and like Julius Caesar's trials and tributes, right? You don't have the context for understanding that piece. And I think generative AI and AI in general is kind of like that. It's an evolution of technology, and it does require some degree of understanding of what's come before it to be able to take the best advantage of it, to know how to use it. But at the same time, you can do it so much faster now because there's just so much more out there available.
Because what's happening is, for all of us out there, we're dealing with infobesity. We have
Yeah,
too much data in front of us. On the planet Earth today, there's about 175 zettabytes. If you took CDs or DVDs and stacked them one on top of another, those old things, they would
yeah,
go 124 times between the Earth and the Moon today, and it's growing at about 70% per year. So the problem is data, whether it's in your own personal cloud or it's in a corporate cloud. It's how do we deal with the data? How do we create these engines, these omni-channel engines that can solve in a horizontal way, solve all kinds of problems? Your situation was collaboration and meeting, but that same issue happens with a supply chain, right?
sure.
Go down through and optimize the supply chain, because when it's all said and done, you're optimizing the meeting, and you're optimizing the meeting to have the best outcome for successes. That's what it's all about. And
Yeah,
so go down through future for all of you out there, try the tools, use them, get comfortable with them. It's kind of like music, isn't it? The more you
yeah,
practice, the better you get. And if you
yeah,
don't understand the basics, just like in mathematics, it's hard to do calculus if you never had any algebra, right?
yeah,
You go down through and practice it.
sure.
And you're going down through. So in your journey, during this journey,
Yeah.
how do you, looking back from your experience from MBA to CEO, what advice would you give other startups, other entrepreneurs out there that are interested in launching a tech startup? What's important for them? What are three things that they need to know?
Get started is probably on that list. But the three skills that I've learned at Meahana and in this job that I don't possess all of these at equal level, but my team does. And I guess I would put them in rank order. I would call it speed, discipline, and agility, right? You have to go super fast, but then you also have to have some discipline to measure what's working and what's not working. And then you have to have the courage to say that didn't work at all and do something quite different, right? And so if you've only ever worked in huge corporate environments where change is sluggish and slow and speed is not your friend and it's too much discipline, it's really, really difficult. So I'm fortunate to have a group of founders who have that speed, discipline, and agility, all at different levels. I'm probably the fastest in terms of speed. I have some others that are really good at discipline and putting plans and execution paths together, and then we're all pretty good at the agility, at least we're learning to be.
Yeah, that's part of it, is the synergy between the entrepreneurs. And the other thing is, being passionate about what you're doing and
Definitely.
presenting it in an enchanting way so that it excites people. They can feel at an emotional level. It's critically important. Remember the three things. We need operational expertise, access to capital, network, and contacts. And if you have those three in a resilient team, any company can become a unicorn because you can pivot to success. We talk about pivoting, but nobody talks about where it goes.
Yeah.
It can go in a circle, right? Or you can move forward. And the mentoring, the advice, the guidance is really important. And today, with these new tools, in 2016, we started building some of the early generative AI models, pre-transformer in 2016. In fact, I raised $7 million in 3 months to do that. People had no clue. I was on stage, in San Francisco, and I was talking about AI. They didn't even understand what AI is. Oh, this is new. It's not new. It's been around a while. I mean, come on.
Sure.
But it's different now than it was then. Why? Because it can start making some decisions on all kinds of things, things like sentiment analysis, things like ontology, ladder networks, variational autoencoders. These tools are going to change our world, and we got a lot of challenges in front of us, right? That
Yeah.
need to be solved. So, you've helped many organizations transform the meetings and decision making. What's one practical tip a leader can apply right away to improve their next team meeting?
First and foremost, you have to really clearly understand what is the purpose of this meeting? What are the outcomes I'm trying to get to? I know that sounds simple, but a lot of times people race into the design of the meeting or just start the meeting with no agenda. So the preparation and the thought process behind that, and then ask yourself, am I able to get that from the people inside the meeting, or am I shoving it down people's throat? Is it knowledge transfer? Or am I actually extracting human and leveraging new intelligence inside the conversation? And then where do I go from that? So what's the right design or method, leading the meeting to be able to pull out the right pieces, and then knowing what to do with that and being accountable to yourself and to the rest of the group that we had this meeting last Tuesday. Here were the action items. Here's what Gary, you said you're going to do. Next meeting, showing that stuff up forward keeps people a lot more attentive. It reminds me of the school professors, or actually Gary, in our meetings, you just like call people out at random and like kind of put them on the spot, and it's uncomfortable at first, but it certainly makes you more prepared the next time. So leaders need to be able to do that as well. And they can't do that if they never took notes, if they didn't lead a good meeting, they had no actions, then it's just a daily stand-up call versus an actual conversation around an initiative.
You know, I learned that I was an MBA professor, and I learned that, but going down through it as a clinical psychologist, you know, keeping people engaged is important. But I have one more thing for you.
Yeah.
What have been the most significant learning moments in your career? One, and then two is, how do people get a hold of you? So if they want to reach out.
Yeah, let me start with the last one. So the best is LinkedIn, frankly. Adam Boggs, it's my LinkedIn profile. I very regularly post, Gary, like 50% as much as you do, but I'm pretty active on that. In terms of, the biggest learning is there's sort of this three arcs of your career. You have this sort of learning, earning, and returning phase. And maybe I'm oversimplifying the world, but I think a lot of young people, especially, they want to like earn money in their 20s versus learning everything that they want to learn and being able to get into whatever their niche is. If you think about your career, it's this hourglass where you're getting more narrow towards one specific discipline. You started off as a generalist, but then at a certain point, you get to like a director, senior director level. And now in order to grow in a company, you actually have to become a generalist again. And that's awesome. And that's the space where you can actually earn a lot of money, but you do have to learn something that's unique to you and into the world. You can't just float around and and work at 12 different companies in 12 different roles and expect to be paid for that expertise in any meaningful way. I also wrote, as you know, I wrote this book, and I would say to people, if you like learning and you like the journey of learning, ask yourself, 10 years from now, if I were to write a book where I could monetize my experience and monetize my mind, what would that book be about? And if you can answer that question, then your next 10 years becomes an interesting learning journey of note taking and journaling and hypothesis testing to make that book relevant and interesting. So that was more than you asked for there.
Yeah, no, that's great, Adam. Thanks for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us today.
Sure.
Thanks to all my listeners for joining one more time. Gary's Picks. My name is Gary Fowler. I'm your host. Stay happy, stay safe, and stay healthy. And I'll be back to you again soon with another exciting edition. Joel?
Great interview, Adams. Thanks so much for sharing your insights. Seriously, learning, earning, and giving back?
Returning.
Returning. Well,
that's where Gary's at. He's in the earning/returning. He's right there on the cusp.
Yeah. No, that's great. I and also the book and the idea of thinking about writing a book, and then it basically gives you a focal point, gives you purpose, and now a reason to really be engaged. I love it. Thanks so much. Gary, thank you, of course, as always. And we'll see everybody back in 2 weeks for the next edition of Gary's Picks. Till then,
see you, everybody. Well. Take care of yourself. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Adam.
Sure.